everyone to my spoiler-free review for my second favorite novel of all times, The Thornbirds by Australian author Colleen McCullough. I'm Caro Herrera, the Mental Traveler. The Thornbirds was published in 1977 and it was so popular that by 1983 a TV adaptation had already been made of it. It's about 700 pages long and the title of the book comes from this supposedly Celtic legend that tells of a bird who spends its whole life searching for a thorn tree, and once it finds it, it sings its first and only song while it impales itself upon a sharp thorn, and the song that it's singing is supposedly so beautiful that the whole world stills to listen and God in his heaven smiles. And the bird doesn't know that it is dying as it's singing, and it's sort of like a metaphor because human beings usually know that they're going to suffer while they're pursuing their ambitions or dreams, but we still don't care if we're going to suffer or pay for it dearly. We're still gonna go and pursue it. Back when I was 16, I had just finished reading The Hunchback of Notre Dame, and I was really captured by the character of Frollo, this priest who falls desperately in love with the gypsy Esmeralda. And so I was kind of intrigued by this sort of forbidden romance between priests and women, so I searched for any books of this sort, and that's how I came upon The Thornbirds. I first watched the TV series and I loved it, so I went out and got the book, and through the years I've reread it several times. It's a wonderful story and it still holds the same sort of magic for me. I'm gonna mention why this is my second favorite book of all times later on, but The Thornbirds was really the novel that made me fall for Australia, so I owe it my passion for the land down under. And if I ever go to Australia, fingers crossed, I'll be taking it along with me, because when I went backpacking across Europe, that book that I took so I could read whenever I could was The Thornbirds. The Thornbirds is this sort of family saga that spans from 1915 to 1969. It's about the Cleary family and it tells the story of 3 of its generations. And in each generation there is a really wonderful, cool, unique love story. So that really appeals to me as a helpless romantic. But the real core of the story is the forbidden love between Father Ralph de Bricassor, an ambitious, handsome priest, and Maggie Cleary. Their love completely hold of my imagination. And even though I don't like Ralph that much at bits, I find their story really intriguing. Though I should warn you that these two met when she was a little girl and he was a grown man. They sort of just connected right from the start, but the love that they feel for each other isn't romantic at first, so it's not like a sort of creepy story. Colleen McCullough really takes care of nourishing their love affair so it can develop at a right unbelievable speed. And the author also goes on to present us some really memorable characters. For example, formidable Mary Carson, who is just as passionate in her 60s as I'm sure she must have been in her youth. Also the proud and strong and noble Fiona Cleary, and even a former Nazi soldier turned West Germany diplomat with a heart of gold. And the reader also learns a lot about Australia, how life was like in the last century. We learn about its traditions and its culture, about living at a station in New South Wales and thus the life of a drover. And we even learn about cutting cane in Queensland. But we also visit London, Rome, Sydney, the Vatican, Greece. So all in all, we get a lot of really cool elements that make up this fascinating novel that is not one bit dull. It has some amazingly beautiful passages. The love scenes, I find them really endearing because they're not physical, they're described more as their approach in a more emotional and spiritual way. So that was interesting and different and cool. Colleen McCullough has such a way with words. There's so much magic in them that even though she continually warns the reader that in Australia, in the Outback, you can't fight the dust, the heat, or the flies, I just long to be there and live there forever. I also really find fascinating as a history lover that we learn about Australia and its role during World War II, from the soldiers it shipped out to Africa to fight, to its aftermath, and how the returning soldiers were given pieces of the former big stations. And I also really like the way that at the start of the novel we get this really clear idea about women's life back in the early years of the 20th century. It was really confined to the house and really unfair. But then towards the 60s, we see the contrast with the newest generations of the Cleary family and how women are now more modern, more free, and more feminist in a way. And getting back to the love stories, I really liked all of them, but I just want to mention that if you've watched or read The Magic of Ordinary Days and you've enjoyed it, then there's a love story here that's kind of similar to the one portrayed in that novel. So maybe you're gonna like The Thornbirds because of that. I give The Thornbirds a 4.5 out of 5 stars review because it's a beautifully written story that's very easy to read despite the fact that we're introduced to dozens of characters, and my love for it has endured through the years. It leaves me every time with a lot of messages about what being a human being entails, our own mortality, life after death, and a bonus is that I really like all of the love stories presented here. Still, there are some characters that I don't really like that much. Luke O'Neill, and some storylines. Had I written The Thornbirds, I wouldn't have gone down that specific road. Luke O'Neill. But it's still a really lovely book, so I highly recommend it. The final product is wonderful. There's also a musical for The Thornbirds, as well as the TV adaptation that I mentioned, which I shall be reviewing next week. And there's even a sequel to that miniseries, but I've never watched it because the material in the sequel does not appear in the book. Anyways, thank you very much for watching my spoiler-free review for The Thornbirds. I hope you guys enjoyed it. And let me know in the description box below. You can find the link to the Goodreads page for The Thornbirds. I'm Gara, the Mental Traveler, and I wish you a wonderful day. Goodbye.